Hello everyone. In today's tutorial we will be doing something interesting that will be very useful in future tutorials. We will be reading a configuration file and using the values from this file. I will use as a starter project this project here, the STL to create window, which is available on my GitHub. And what I would like to do is to have the size of the window set dynamically. So I will create a configuration file. So let me create a new folder here called config. And inside config, I will create a configuration file. Let's say this will be a game, so game.config. And here we will have these two properties, window width and window height. I will just call screen width instead of window and screen height. And right now the values are 512 by 284, 512 by 284, and that will be our configuration file. So we have two properties, one per line, and then in the first line we have the name of the property, one space, and the value of the property. And then in the next line, the same logic, the name of the property, one space, and the value of the property. Okay? So that's that. Then an easy way to read configuration files is to use the FileStream library from C++. So I'll just include FileStream, and then we will have access to the functionality that we need to read the file. Let's define a function here. It can be here at the top. So let's define a function which will return true or false depending if we were able to read the file or not, called load game configuration. So let's create this function here. We want this function to return true at end. And then here we start making use of the FileStream library. The first thing we want to do is to get access to that file, kind of open it using the FileStream in method. So we will use this ifstream, and then we will pass here to this basically input file stream the path to our file. In this case it will be same directory, source src config game.config. That's our file. After this step we have to check if the file is open. For some reason the program might not have been able to open the file, and then we cannot proceed. So let's check that. If it is open, actually if it's not open, then we want to do something. So we want to log an error to the console and we want to return false. So let's return false already here, and let's log the error. So far I think I've been using the cout functionality to append log to the console, but here I would like to start making use of the stl log functions. In this case is an error, so we want to log error. This function here takes a category and then the message that we want to log. In this case, the category will be log error, and the message will be cannot open configuration file from. Then we can get let's say that's from, and then we want to have also the error here. Oops, sorry, the error. So the first argument here is this config, game config. Let's just create a constant for that here for now. Const std string config file path. Well, let's maybe just define a macro. We don't need the string, so we can just define config file path as being this value here. Now we can use this here, because then when our program is compiled, this token will be replaced by this values here, by this value here. And we can reuse them this here. And the second argument here, that we want to have access to the error. So what was the error that caused our file to not be able to be open? And we can have access to that by using this function here, str is str error, yes, error, and then error number. So that's that. So we will now have access to more details about the error. And then we return false. If everything is okay, then we return true. All right. Let's say we were able to open our file. So now we can start reading the values. So we have in our file one param and one value, right? So the param, let's represent with a string. And the value, those will be integer values. So let's, or unsigned int, so they're all positive. Let's declare this as our value. And now that we have these variables, we can start reading from the file into these variables here using this approach here. While we didn't reach the end of the file, we want to read. We start from the first line and then we go that the reading, the way how the reading works, we start from the first line and then we start reading token by token here until we reach the end of the first line. Then we move to the second line and so on and so forth until we reach the end of the file. So we know that per line we have two tokens, one representing the param and another one representing the value. So we read the first one into the param variable and we read the second one into the value variable. Now we want to check if the param is equal to string width. We want to set string width. So this is not a constant anymore, so let's change that as well to a simple variable. And this variable will receive the value else if param it's equal to screen height, oops, then we want to set the screen height to the value we just read. We don't have those variables here, so let's create those. Let's say we have a uint screen width and a uint screen height. Now this is correct. Then when we finish reading our file, we have to close it. So we release any allocated resource. And something we can do, which will be nice as well, is to log this configuration to the console. So let's log the loaded configuration. Let's do that using the stl log function now, because we just want to log stuff. And let's say our game configuration will be like this. So we have the screen width set to a certain number. Stored in screen width variable. Let's just copy this one here. We have the screen height. Just align those. Stored in the screen height variable. So that's our configuration, and that's that actually. So this will be all the code that we need so far for reading the configuration file, setting the values to variables, interpreting these variables, defining to which destination the values will be set, and closing the file, very important. And then just, this is optional of course, but it's nice because if we want to reload this configuration later, like by pressing the R key for instance, we want to see that the new configuration was loaded correctly. Okay, so let's use this function here. So let's use it before we create the window. So this we don't need anymore because this will come from the configuration file. Here we need now to have the values defined. So let's call load configuration here at this point so that our configuration is loaded. But let's check if we cannot load the configuration, we cannot create a window. Therefore, we have to stop the program here. So here we do the following. So let's log an error. stl log category error, saying that it was not possible to load the configuration file. Well, maybe since we added already a log in the method itself, I think we don't need to log anything here again. So we can just remove that. We will just stop the execution of the program. So we just return exit failure here. But before we do that, let's just make sure any stl allocated resource is released, and then we can exit the program. Alright, but if we succeeded and the configuration is loaded, then all we have to do is to use here the screen width and the screen height variables. Alright, so this should do actually. Let's compile the program. Let's run. Okay. So this doesn't look nice. So what happened here is that probably we got stuck in this reading loop here for some reason. So let's just double check our load configuration function. So we opened the file. We started reading the file. Right, so while we didn't reach the end of the file, we continue reading the params until it is over, and then we add those to param and value. We check param, we set the values, we close the file, we log, and we return true. So what's wrong about it? Alright, maybe this STL log error is not working because we are not setting the bug level here. So let's just use STL log for now, just to make things simple. I have the feeling that we are not being able to open this file actually. Yes, as you can see, you cannot open configuration file from config game config. Okay, so the path here, it's not right because we are running from the root directory, and this config, it's inside the src folder. So I will move config outside of the src folder, because this will be the most natural thing in the end, that we have our configuration together with the executable of our game, so we can change. So probably users won't have access to the source of the application anyway. I think now if we run again, we can see the window. Yes, so this is now working correctly. The size is also correct. The title here, I think it's fixed though. Let's change that. So this part here, since we are outputting the configuration here, I think I'll just remove this here. Let me just compile it again. Let's run. Still works. And now I want to change the configuration file to have a bigger window. So 1280 by 720, for instance. Now I don't need to compile the program anymore, right? So because I'm just reading the file, I can just execute the program again, and now we can see a bigger window. So that's it actually. So this is how you can read a configuration from a file and to change the behavior of your program dynamically without actually having to change any code. This will be very helpful for upcoming tutorials where we will be, for instance, reloading level maps, reloading tile sets, or even reloading some properties of the game, like is the game in debug state, it's the game it's not, the size of the window, the scale of the sprites, and there are many things we can change via configuration that will be so helpful for us later on, that this skill here, this knowledge, it's very important. So I hope you enjoyed this small tutorial. I am preparing new ones for the coming weeks, and hopefully soon we will be doing something a little bit more fun. Thank you very much, and see you next time.